Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Armistice Day and Cities, Regions and Built Environment theme today. I'll hand over to the COP President, Alok Sharma, for some opening remarks, followed by our high-level champion, Nigel Topping.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and good afternoon to everyone. I want to start by noting that today is Remembrance Day, which was marked this morning in the UK Pavilion, and my grateful thanks to all colleagues who joined us to mark our respects for the fallen. I want to turn now to the negotiations. Detailed discussions have continued across a whole range of issues over the past 24 hours. Archie Young chaired a meeting with heads of delegations yesterday to hear views on the draft cover decisions. I held a range of bilateral meetings with parties and groups and also received comprehensive briefings last night from my team of co-facilitating ministers. A tranche of draft decision texts were published early this morning. These include draft texts on adaptation, on loss and damage, on finance, on the enhanced transparency framework, and Article 6. I'm pleased to say that yesterday we concluded the discussions on the Global Goal on Adaptation, confirming the forward work programme, and I hope that this will be adopted. Text was also finalised on response measures and on the Santiago network. As you will know, I held a stock-taking plenary this morning with all parties and observers to set out the collective work programme over the next 24 hours. Now look, whilst we have made progress, and I want to acknowledge the spirit of cooperation and civility that's been demonstrated throughout the negotiations by negotiators and ministers, we are not there yet on the most critical issues. There is still a lot more work to be done, and Cop26 is scheduled to close at the end of tomorrow. So time is running out. As I speak, my ministerial co-facilitators, other ministers and negotiators are rolling up their sleeves and working hard to find solutions to some of the most
We're back. State against Rittenhouse. Appearances as before with the jury in the jury room. And yesterday I misspoke. Age takes its toll. I thought yesterday was Thursday at the end of the day. Maybe it was just because it seemed like a longer day, but in any event, so anything I said about schedule is somewhat compromised. It would be ideal if we could finish on Friday, but let's see what happens. Anything else before we get started?
Two things, Your Honor. One, my next witness is going to be Dr. John Black, and his testimony will involve a computer program and demonstrative evidence with all videos that have already been entered into evidence, and how he establishes the times that he'll testify to. And what I'm asking the court to allow is to have him testify at this witness stand to my left, so that he can be hooked into the cord and manipulate his computer.
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay.
And then there's the Armstrong report. There's been new photographs, and there's already been testimony about some old I shouldn't say photographs, enhancements of video evidence would be the correct statement. It's my understanding that Mr. Armstrong testified that the video program he uses is amped, and amped has an internal printout of everything that the operator does on it. So if I do X, X is documented, you push the button, it says he did X. My understanding is that there should be a report for that, and then the new photographs today. And our question comes into, on testimony, on cross-examination, when he was testifying to what he did to the video, there's a definite discrepancy between the aspect ratios and the amount of pixels, so I'm asking for that report. And then the new photographs, which the state intends to introduce in the rebuttal case, I would like the report from AMPT for that, so that we can check that. I spoke to Mr. Binger, he said he would try to do that. I don't know if he can or he can't.
Are you saying the program is named AMPed?
Yeah.
He needs a microphone on.
Yeah.
My understanding from Senior Examiner Armstrong's testimony is that he used a program known as AMPed, A-M-P-E-D, the number 5. If he did use that program, AMPed 5, which is a gold standard of forensic analysis, AMPed 5 does produce a report of all manipulations or actions taken upon the start to the finish. That's the report I think we're talking about right now.
Okay.
There should be 2 of them.
I didn't hear the last thing you said.
There should be at least 2 of them, 1 for each
Okay.
change.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, we don't have to, I don't believe we have an obligation to provide that.
To the finish. That's the report I think we're talking about right now.
Okay.
I am not saying that they do. He'd have to go back he's on his way here now. He'd have to go back to the crime lab and get them.
Well,
So-
can you reach him? And
I can certainly try.
why don't you do that? I'm not going to worry about anything till it happens. Well, let's see what can be done on that. And then, were you done on that?
Yes.
Then I did get Mr. Binger's transmission of last night, which unfortunately was not. Was there other than the initial minute or two? Was there actual video, or was it black screen?
There was, it's like a 20-some minute compilation video with the defendant's voice.
Well, let me try it. Let me try opening it here, because at home it was there. I was able to hear the audio, but the video was all black. So I don't know what the significance of that is until I look at it. Hopefully it'll open here.
Is that what we want coming out of Cop26 report that came out, which made clear that whilst the window on keeping 1.5 within reach is closing, it is still possible to get there, and that is why I and others have also talked about the decisive decade. What you will have seen in the draft cover decision so far is setting out how we think parties should return and look again at the commitments that they have made. Ultimately, it is going to be up to parties to come forward with consensus on the cover decisions and indeed the other texts as well. We will be circulating another round of the draft cover decisions later on tonight, overnight. But I've been very clear, Archie Young has been very clear, is that we are urging ambition. And I've held meetings with quite a number of the negotiating groups, and I have been told by groups, by individual parties, that they want to see ambition in the outcome of COP26.
Thank you. Gentleman in the second row with the red tie.
Robert Peston, ITV. Mr. Sharma, we just heard from Frans Timmermans. He said that his hope is that the cover decisions would set in train a process such that within a year, the contributions made by individual countries would have been toughened up so that 1.5 would be achieved within a year. We are right now seeing many countries trying to weaken even, some would say, a fairly soft set of commitments that you set out in your initial cover declaration. What hope do you have that 1.5 will be kept alive in that meaningful sense that we will reach it within a year?
Well, Robert, I mean, I do think that the draft cover decisions we put out were ambitious, and I think if they are adopted as we intend, I think we will be able to say with credibility that we have kept 1.5 within reach. And in the draft that was set out, it makes very clear that countries should come back again ahead of the stocktake in 2023. We talk about an annual synthesis report, a meeting of leaders on this issue. Those discussions have been taking place. I'll ask Archie if he wants to come in, because he had yesterday a long discussion with heads of delegation about the cover decisions, and as I said, we will issue further text overnight. Archie, do you want to comment?
Thank you. And I'd start by saying that keeping 1.5 alive requires a whole series of actions and elements from this COP. As you know, part of that, actually a major part, is all the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, and long-term strategies and net zero commitments that were made in advance of COP, thanks to the extensive encouragement by the COP president and the global diplomatic effort that went into encouraging countries to really come forward with their highest possible ambition. Another element that can really help keep 1.5 alive, and forgive me that I always bring it back to the technical detail, is the rules, the systems, the mechanisms that actually can give confidence for countries that partly that they will do what they say they will do, but also that can enable higher ambition. Then a third element, yes, it is the political signal that comes from this COP. A lot of that will come from the cover decisions. As the COP president said, I held consultations with all heads of delegation yesterday afternoon. That was open to observers, so I'm sure that some of you will have followed that and picked up some of what was said. There are very strongly divergent views on a number of elements, including some countries, one country representing a group that represents several countries, suggested actually we should delete the whole section on mitigation. So that, I think, gives you a sense that there is not yet at this conference a consensus that we do need to collectively ramp up our ambition. But also what is clear is that underpinning that is a desire to see greater ambition across all elements of the Paris Agreement, and that is exactly what we are pushing for.
Lady in the front row here. It's coming back.
Thanks. Hi, Lisa Friedman from the New York Times. Thanks for doing this. Two questions. Could you tell us what sticking points there are at this juncture on loss and damage? And also, I'm wondering, out of the US-China deal, has that had any impact, shaken anything loose in the actual negotiations? If not, why not? If so, anything specific? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Let me take those two, and then on loss and damage, if Archie wants to come in. So on loss and damage, what we have done, as I said in my opening remarks, we've obviously agreed text, or text has been set out on the Santiago network and the work program that follows. I hope we'll be able to gavel this shortly. There is further work that is going on the issue of loss and damage, and I'll ask Archie if he wants to comment on that. On the issue of the US-China agreement, I mean, look, I very much welcome the fact that this is an agreement that sets out cooperation between the world's two biggest emitters. I think that is good news, and what I hope is that the spirit of cooperation in that agreement is also going to drive forward the negotiations here at Cop26.
So if I add to that on loss and damage, but before I do, I just looked across at Nigel and I realized that I missed a crucial part of the elements that can keep 1.5 alive related to this COP, which is the incredible efforts of the high-level champions and other campaigns and initiatives that can accelerate action across all sectors and all parts of society. Apologies, Nigel.
Well, Archie, it's not really my efforts, it's the cities and regions. I mean, but I think it is worth reminding everybody that, for example, the ambition we saw yesterday that clearly indicates that combustion engines on its way out in the early 30s will not be yet reflected in many NDCs. So when you look at assessments of adding up all the NDCs, there's another source of an ambition enhancement which is outside of current national plans, which is the real economy.
Thanks. And then on loss and damage, the COP president asked Minister Dijsselbloem of Luxembourg and Minister Charles Jr. of Jamaica to consult, first of all, on how the work on the Santiago network, this new entity that can enable that, be that catalyst for action for loss and damage, how that could be strengthened. And they've made progress on that, and that is reflected in new draft texts. But also ask them the question of what more? What more can be done, or what more might be possible to be done, either starting at this COP or beyond, to really accelerate action on loss and damage. And so we are continuing to discuss that with parties. We wait to see what parties come forward with. But I think the very fact that, let's see how the cover decisions develop. Like I said, we heard a lot of comments yesterday. But our draft was the first potential cover decisions that actually had its own section on loss and damage. It had been referenced in a couple before, but I think that really highlighted the political imperative that we are putting on this issue.
And actually, just adding to that point, is that I think that also demonstrates the movement that we have seen on the discussion around loss and damage. I think there has been a change in the way that all parties are approaching this, which is something I very much welcome.
Gentleman in the second row in the centre.
Thank you. Krishnan Girimurthy, Channel 4 News. Are the activists right to say that a text that doesn't have a commitment to phase out fossil fuels shows that this process is meaningless and is the blah, blah, blah that they had warned about at the beginning? And how damaging to your ability to negotiate are things like Britain's refusal to join France, Denmark and Costa Rica in the commitment to end oil and gas?
So I think the first thing to say is that obviously in the draft cover decisions, it does reflect the issue on fossil fuels. Let's wait and see what emerges in terms of the next round of text. I think on the wider issue of the UK government domestically joining, I think, this Beyond Oil and Gas Alliance, I think the first thing I'd say is that the UK has come a very long way in terms of our transition to clean energy. I mean, just a few years ago, we had a very small percentage of our energy coming from offshore wind. We now actually have the biggest offshore wind sector in the world. I mean, literally the biggest in the world. And the aim is to quadruple that by 2030, and I think it may be possible to go even beyond that. The other thing that, as a result of that, what you've seen is that the use of oil and gas has diminished in the energy sector in the United Kingdom. And what has been really important as part of that is also to ensure this just transition, as we always talk about. So that is why the government put in place the North Sea transition deal. You know, I would say that the Committee on Climate Change does recognize the fact that our energy mix will still have some oil and gas in it. But I think it's worth recognizing that we are recognized around the world as a leader in terms of clean energy transition.
Gentleman in the second row here.
Thank you. Bin Chen from Shanghai Media Group. I also have a follow-up question on the US-China joint declaration. So, Mr. President, you just mentioned you appreciate the spirit, but yet there might still not be good enough to close the deal with this declaration. So what substantial progress do you expect to see in the next step? Thank you.
Yes, as I said, I mean, I think, you know, I welcome this cooperation. I think it does help to provide some momentum. And, you know, it's an opportunity for China and the US within their respective negotiating groups and talking to other parties to encourage them as well to come forward. I mean, ultimately, what we are looking for here is a negotiated outcome amongst almost 200 countries. That's what we are looking to achieve consensus on. You know, ultimately, you know, what is an ambitious agreement? An ambitious agreement is one that keeps 1.5 within reach. That is what I have said right from the start of taking on this role, and that is what we continue to push for, an ambitious outcome at Cop26. Frankly, that's what the world deserves.
Got time for one more question as we have to wrap up quickly. Gentleman in the middle, the blue shirt. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Peperkorn, Volkskrant, Netherlands. It's a question for Mr. Sharma. Yesterday, actually, you said that by now we would have, I think you used the phrase semi-final or near-final texts. They are not there. Were you too optimistic yesterday, or are you trying to stage a kind of a moment of drama which is needed to push it further tomorrow? Thanks.
Well, I think people have sometimes described me as no drama Sharma. Well, look, what I'm trying to do, along with Archie and the whole team, is to push this process forward. I think quite a lot has been achieved, and I think you're seeing that in the texts that are coming. And there is a real spirit of cooperation here as well. But we are still some way away from finalizing those that are very critical issues which have been outstanding. And I don't think we can overemphasize how difficult this is. If it was easy, we would have resolved this over the past 6 years, but we haven't. And that's why, I am ensuring that we use every moment between now and the end of this COP to reach agreement. It's why we've got facilitating ministers driving this forward, why Archie is working very closely with negotiators across all parties to drive this over the line. We will keep going. I want an ambitious outcome coming out of this COP.
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.